Alrighty, hello and welcome everybody to Advancing State-of-the-Art Threat Exposure Management Practices. Today's exciting webinar is sponsored by Zafran and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Mackenzie Puddesy with Actual Tech Media, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this conversation today as organizations are weary of playing defense. Thus, as we look to go on the offensive in our fight against relentless threat actors, emerging disciplines like threat exposure management transform historically reactive tactics into proactive battle strategies. In this way, we understand not only our risk posture, but also factor our available compensating controls in our defense strategies. Today, we are joined by industry expert Rick Bosworth from Zafran Security, who will share his perspective on this emerging cybersecurity practice. Likely, that is why you are here, to beef up your cybersecurity and get on the offense. And luckily, you're going to leave with the information that you are seeking to do just that. This is going to be such a cool conversation, and I cannot wait to get started. So let's zip through the housekeeping and get things on our way, shall we? Alrighty, first I want to draw your attention to the questions section of your webinar console. This is the best place to get involved, get interactive, and post all your insightful questions, comments, feedback, and ideas. We indeed do want to hear from you. I've already seen some hellos and how are yous out there, but why don't you find that questions tab now and start things out by saying a quick hi, hello, hola, bonjour, aloha, or whatever greeting you want to give the rest of the community out there with you today, and give a little wave in there. Awesome. Love seeing this. Love seeing this. As a quick side note, that window is also the best place to reach out and let us know if you have any technical issues during the session today. Knock on wood, of course, that doesn't happen. And, most things you can actually fix with a browser refresh. So that should be your first step, getting rid of any of the usual tech gremlins. But if not, just shoot a message in that questions tab and the Actual Tech Media crew, and I will be there to help. And the last thing I want to point out on your audience console is the handouts tab. Go check out some cool resources and follow-ups to our conversation today, which will be packed with great info. But of course, we've got even more. Both a data sheet in there with an overview of the Zafran Threat Exposure Data Management Platform. You don't want to sleep on that, as well as the Vulnerability and Exposure Management Cheat Sheet. I love a little bit of a shortcut if it's a good one, so definitely check this out there. Now, if all that cool content wasn't enough of a sweet giveaway, we also have a $250 Amazon gift card as a prize drawing at the end of our webinar. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. If you are not sure what those are, well, you can find those full T's and C's linked in the handouts tab as well. Additionally, there is a $50 gift card up for grabs for the best question asked in today's session. We will have time for live Q&A with Rick, and so I'm going to be voicing as many of your questions during that segment to our speaker. And of course, the best, the most insightful, the most interesting question will be picked, and you could be the winner of that $50 Amazon gift card. Okay, well, I believe that is it for the housekeeping. I like to keep it short and sweet if we can. And we are now ready to start today's webinar. So I'm excited to introduce you all to Rick Bosworth. He is the Director of Product Marketing at Zafran. As a former product manager, Rick brings a technical perspective to cybersecurity, marketing strategy, and execution, building and executing go-to-market plans while nurturing profitable growth. As a lifelong learner, he holds a degree both from Texas A&M University and the University of Texas in Austin. When he is not launching the latest product, he is helping sales win, and he is discounting cash flows, while Rick is also one to dabble in adventurous dining, endurance, athletics, and root for his favorite sports teams. So, a dynamic individual. I'm super excited to hear what you've prepared for us, Rick. So why don't you take it away and, well, welcome to the stage.
All right. Thank you, Mackenzie, and I'm glad to be here. Hey, thank you, everybody, for investing your time with us today. I know it's valuable. So what we hope to cover today is we're going to go through a primer to what is CTEM, or Continuous Threat Exposure Management. What is it? What does it do? How does it benefit you? There's a lot of noise out there in the market already. Seemingly, we've all seen this play before or read this chapter before in this book. Every time Gartner creates a new acronym, there's a lot of vendors rushing out there trying to stick their thumbs on the scale. Full disclosure, Zafran is a CTIM vendor, but I'm going to do my level best here just to present to you a perspective on what the CTIM solution set looks like, what the market, that is, looks like, technology and process together. And then I'll close with an invitation to learn more about Zafran. So let's dig in. We'll talk about the case for change when you're talking with your CISO about budget. Why is it what you're doing right now is not good enough? Why it won't get you where you need to be? We'll talk about the role of context in decision making. We'll introduce CTIM, go through its key capabilities, the positive business outcomes that you can expect, and go through a representative example. So with that in mind, why is vulnerability management not enough? Everybody has a vulnerability management program. How is that working out for you? Well, like many security practitioners that I speak with, everyone is overwhelmed by the sheer scale and speed of the vulnerabilities that are coming in. It's overwhelming or desensitizing the systems that we have in place, all within a backdrop of resource constraints are a thing. Even if you could hire all the people that you need, and we know that that's not possible, we will quickly burn them out and we'll start the process all over again. So we need better. And while we're thinking about why we need better, we should be able to answer the question around what makes all the vulnerabilities different. Not every vulnerability is created equal. And I'm not just talking about CVSS scores here. I'm talking about context that's unique to your environment. Things like, is the vulnerability itself found in a workload in runtime? Is the resource running that vulnerability? Is it accessible from the public internet? And three, is there threat intelligence which demonstrates there's APT activity, threat actor activity with an exploit out there in the wild? We can use all this information to adjust our risk scoring just from the base CVSS to something that is more meaningful to you, to us. And then thirdly, Mandiant, now part of Google Cloud, reports that time to exploit windows have rapidly shrunk. And you see the numbers here. 2019, it was 63 days. That number stuck out in my mind, as did the one in 2021. I remember that to be 44 days. But, I was really surprised when I saw that last year's number was 5 days. So the attackers are speeding up. So while we remain stuck, the royal we, remain stuck in this soul sucking game of patch whack a mole, the threat actors are persistent, they're skilled, they're using automation to deploy attacks, to find vulnerable resources and exploit them at machine speed, often with the single entry of a keystroke on their keyboard. And then thirdly, I think gone are the days when, if they ever were effective, that we could expect, throwing a spreadsheet over the wall from SecOps back over to the DevOps owner who owned the patch. These manual prioritization and remediation workflows just are not working for us. So if any of that sounds familiar, you're in the right place. This is the fundamental case for CTIM. Okay, just so that we don't make this 30 minutes of boring, I was thinking about how to tell you this story. So The title of the slide is Your Context and Your Risk, and you may very well be wondering, what does a tropical paradise, in this case, Turks and Caicos, have to do with managing risk in my environment? Well, that's a fair question. I'm glad you asked. Um, a colleague of mine, a former senior cybersecurity executive with a healthcare firm, he was enjoying his honeymoon in Turks and Caicos. And at the time, his company, his employer, had a policy: no company devices leave the country. So he was inaccessible for a good amount of time. Hey, that's wonderful. More Mai Tais on the beach. And after all, how often, how many times in our life are we going to celebrate a honeymoon? Hopefully only once. But, you know, anyway, so let's pause for a moment. Think about the situation, the context in which my colleague is enjoying his honeymoon. Now, stop me if you've heard this one. Let's rewind the clock to December of 2021. Raise your hand if any of you had your holiday season disrupted by a little thing called Log4j. Well, guess what? This honeymoon was in December of 2021, and Log4j happened. And my colleague was not very reachable. His team was trying to reach out to him via private message on LinkedIn, but he's rightly enjoying his honeymoon and he's thinking his team has this under control. Whatever this is, he left it in good hands. But meanwhile, there's increasing pressure back home from a very anxious, very senior executive team saying, hey, we have to solve this. Everybody is getting owned. Everybody is talking about how severe this is. We're declaring a crisis. And in that declaration, activated a response flow that had to be a tabletop exercise, a playbook book that had to be followed. All right. And this work came at the disruption of other cybersecurity work that his team was working on. Now, when he was finally able to get plugged in and understand what was going on, the ball was already in motion. And he raised his hand and said, hey, are we really vulnerable to Log4j? And it turned out the answer to that question was no. They had no production vulnerable systems. They had one, maybe two developer systems that were vulnerable. So Log4j was not even a runtime threat for them. It wasn't on any resource that was impacting their business, and it wasn't accessible from the public internet. So why declare a crisis? Again, context matters. Context drives risk. So that's the story. Hopefully that helps you understand why context matters a ton, because that is a fundamental thesis of CTEM. So CTEM stands for Continuous Threat Exposure Management, an acronym coined by Gartner in 2022. It describes the combination of both process and technology that finds, and most importantly, perhaps, prioritizes what most threatens your business. Now, over here on the right, Gartner has this lovely diagram. It's circular by intent because it's a closed loop feedback system and it describes a 5-step process. First, we're going to scope your attack surface. It might be your data center. It might be your cloud service provider. It might be a colo. It might be your social media presence, what have you. Then we're going to discover the assets associated with those attack surfaces and their associated risk. We're going to prioritize those risks by the probability of exploit. Then we will crucially validate how those attacks might play out and critically mobilize mitigative response action. In a nutshell, that is CTEM. Know what your risks are, know your context, prioritize, validate, and mobilize response. Let's dig in a little deeper. So CTEM itself transcends any single product or product category more appropriately. What it's going to do is a CTEM solution, the technology part of the process and technology, will consolidate and advance key capabilities across multiple categories. Might be vulnerability assessment, might be there we go. Let's go back. Sorry about that. Here we go. Might be your CASM, ASM, ASM, EASM, all the acronyms, risk-based vulnerability management. We're going to bring all those capabilities together, enhance them, and use these enhanced capabilities to better prioritize our risk mitigation strategies. Nutshell, highest level of abstraction. Then we're going to continuously refine our security posture improvement plan. And this plays back to the circular nature of Gartner's diagram on the previous slide. So we continuously learn, identify gaps, update our processes and procedures, and we get better so we rarely make the same mistake twice. So what capabilities should we be looking for? What are going to be keys to our CTEM success? First of all, any CTEM solution worth its salt must be able to aggregate and enrich vulnerability information from across your hybrid cloud enterprise, not just your data center, but also any public cloud that you're using. Cloud's a thing. We know that from research that 95% of enterprises out there today are already using public cloud. So what are we enriching our vulnerability information with? Things that we talked about before. Is the vulnerability found in runtime? Is the resource with the vulnerability, is that accessible from the public internet? And does threat intelligence indicate that there is active exploitation? So that all leads up to the probability of exploitation. But then we're going to go a step further. Let's connect those vulnerabilities to your compensating controls already within your security stack and use that to adjust our risk. All right. Then we're going to automatically prioritize those vulnerabilities by that adjusted risk. What does this do? This will help you. Well, we'll get on into the benefits on the next slide, but this will a CTEM solution should also be able to help you implement a mitigative response action. According to Gartner, they're talking about the importance of mobilizing response. I would even go further. I would say that a CTEM should be able to proactively identify and mitigate exposure to high-profile vulns or celebrity vulnerabilities, such as Log4j. Why? So that when the next cybersecurity episode or celebrity vuln happens, it doesn't matter who is on the beach in Turks and Caicos. The team has the information at their fingertips to manage the expectations and quell the anxieties of well-intentioned executives, right? Or stakeholders for that matter. Sorry, didn't mean to pick on any executives in the audience. And then a CTEM should be able to continuously analyze the security controls in your stack. What am I talking about here? A security control might be a firewall from Palo Alto. It might be an EDR agent on an endpoint. It might be a CWPP agent on a production server. So we want to know that we have no blind spots and that we're continuously keeping our thumb on the wire to know that when something is misconfigured, when something that we thought had an EDR agent, had a CWPP agent, if that's missing, we need to be alerted of that. Why? Because this is going to reveal a gap and we can close that gap as quickly as possible. Why? Because our threat actors are really good at using automation to scan IP addresses, probe our defenses, and identify these vulnerabilities. Better we find them before the enemy does. And then part of mobilizing that response action is going to be to connect to our ticketing systems and our orchestration workflows to streamline those remediations. I'm sorry, not remediations, the mitigations. Well, went to the wrong slide, no problem. And here we are. So those were the key capabilities to look for. In terms of positive business outcomes you can expect from a CTEM, maybe a little bit of this is repetitive, but I don't think it hurts. We want to use our context and prioritize based upon that context to understand the vulnerabilities that are most impactful, most likely to be exploited, represent the greatest risk to you and your organization. Then we want to mobilize that mitigation. Mitigation empowers SecOps to reduce risk beyond patching. Everybody knows you can't patch all the things all the time. There are maintenance windows, patch windows, production failovers to orchestrate. So in the meantime, if you can defuse a vulnerability or deploy that mitigation, then you can buy yourself time to make that patch happen and not do so in a haphazard way. Not that anyone ever would. So now that we know that mitigation is key and why, we can expect a CTEM program combining our processes and technologies to help slash the mean time to mitigate, MTTM. Now, word caution here, you may also hear use of the word or acronym MTTC, or mean time to control. To my eye and my understanding, I'm seeing MTTC mean the exact same thing as MTTM. So mitigate, user controls to defuse the vulnerability. Also, by better prioritizing, we're going to narrow our aperture and we're going to focus on what's most important. And what this is going to do, it's going to reduce the number of what we call false criticals. Okay, things that we thought were critical, like in going back to the beach in Turks and Caicos, Log4j, turns out considering that healthcare company's real environment, their real risk was pretty low. So it really wasn't critical. And if you have a policy in place, be it organizational or industry regulatory framework that says, thou shalt patch within N days of a critical vulnerability or Y days within a high severity vulnerability. Staying compliant to those SLAs, we're going to achieve some SLA relief. Why? Because we're going to say, this really isn't that critical now, is it? We have a compensating control here. So that's a positive outcome for your team. No more of that soulless hamster wheel that we're going to get stuck on there. It's going to buy you time. Thirdly, I don't know where that came from. Don't worry about it. It's been a long day. I'm sure you have no idea. We're going to reveal control gaps. Okay. We talked about this previously, but it's better to know sooner than later where the gaps in our controls are. We think we had EDR agent installed on every endpoint, but hey, we're an enterprise. We have 1,000 employees. We have 5,000. We have 50,000 employees. Odds are pretty good that at any given point in time, an agent might be disabled. Better that we know that it's disabled or missing entirely. And you can invent any other number of scenarios. You get the point. And then finally, let's streamline the response action at scale. Manual prioritization and fixing of things hasn't been working for us. It will not continue to work for us. We can do better. Automation is our friend. We're not just turning over the keys to the car, to the ghost in the machine. No one's suggesting that. We're suggesting that we're going to use technology and processes, the very nature of CTEM, to help our team do its job better, to better manage our risk and streamline that response. So that's CTEM. And I mentioned at the beginning, I was essentially going to walk through an example and extend an invitation. So here's a little bit about that invitation and what Zafran does. So Zafran is a threat exposure management company, a CTEM solution. We agentlessly aggregate and enrich all the vulnerability details from across your security stack. Enrich them with what? The things like here shown in red. Uh, is the vulnerability found in runtime? Is the resource exposed to the public internet? Is there threat intel that demonstrates active exploitation in the wild? But we go a step further. We're going to map those even adjusted already base risk score. We're going to map that to your compensating controls, the security controls that are in your stack today. It might be a firewall on your EDR or a quarantine on your EDR. It might be a policy setting on your Palo Alto firewall, what have you. Map those vulnerabilities to your compensating controls, adjust that risk accordingly so that we can automatically prioritize that backlog of your risk register so that you can focus on what matters most to your business. What is this going to do for you? It's going to buy yourself time. We're going to slash the mean time to mitigate, MTTM, or MTTC here, I wrote, and it's going to buy yourself time. Buy yourself time to patch, to remediate the root cause of the error. So that is fundamentally the business value prop of Zafran. Now there's more detail. This is a thought leadership presentation. I beg your indulgence. I thank you for your patience thus far. That'll be the end of that. So again, let's bring it home next two slides. CTEM is fundamentally about assessing risk through a different lens, and it's that lens of context. Context matters, as we've established. And shown here, the researchers at Zafran recently came up with a responsibly reported research, what we call breaking WAF. Essentially, it is a WAF bypass vulnerability affecting 20% of the Fortune 1000. With this misconfiguration of very common WAF firewalls like Imperva, Fastly, Cloudflare, and more, and Akamai, threat actors can bypass WAF protections and gain direct access to your network. Now, shown here in this attack path analysis, we have a 9.8 CVSS score vulnerability running on a production server. So we have a strategic business service running on this production server. And so now a threat actor might be able to access, maybe they exploit the vulnerability, the vulnerable web app itself. Maybe they just quietly go about establishing persistence, mapping your network, moving laterally, low and slow to avoid detection. The point is, there's unauthorized access to your network. You don't know about it. Someone gained entry. So with something, a CTEM solution such as Zafran, you would be able to identify this risk and better plan your processes and your get well plan. Last slide, and then we'll pause for questions. So in summary, a primer to continuous threat exposure management. CTEM is a combination, a process and technology that assesses your context in order to better prioritize what poses the greatest risk to your organization. And then finally, It's going to validate and mobilize any mitigative responses. And it's that mitigation which is going to reduce your risk and buy you time to remediate root cause. Now, if you would like to learn more about Zafran and how we might be able to transform your CTEM initiatives, please visit us at zafran.io, shown here, or you can send an email to sales@zafran.io. And I'm Rick at zafran.io. If you would like to contact me directly, no problem. And I'm sure you've already read the customer case study over here, or the customer quote, I should say. Um, let us help you. Let's show you how Zafran can be a force multiplier for your team and really transform mitigating risks in your environment. With that, I'll close. I'll stop. I appreciate your time and attention, and let's open it up for questions. What do you say, Mackenzie?
I say let's do it. We've got quite a few questions here from the audience, so I think we can dive in. Let's start with this one from Paul. Paul's asking, from Zafran's perspective, are the KPIs and other critical metrics changing as the state of the art for threat management continues to advance?
Yeah, it's a great question, and thank you, Paul. Um, I would say that answer is yes. As solutions and processes come in and help your people be better at their job, naturally the bar is moved. So no good deed goes unpunished. So one could reasonably expect that as your metrics continue to improve, so too will the KPIs placed upon your team.
Awesome. So Rick, you talked a lot about context and using this context to adjust risk. So do I have a say in how that risk adjustment is made, or do users have a say in that?
I think I understand the question. So short answer is yes.
Mhm.
So context matters. So our algorithm starts with the base risk score and uses context that's unique to your environment to give you an applicable risk score that is unique to your environment. So naturally, a customer would want to know is, okay, how much weighting did you apply to whichever factors? We're completely transparent in that. We show you how we're moving the risk score up and down based upon each individual factor. So that's now today. And I'm happy to report that our existing customers, have been asking for the ability to customize that algorithm, and we're working on that, and we expect to deliver that in very short order. I'm impressed every day that I'm interacting with our R&D and our product team about how innovative and committed relentlessly to customer success they are. So I have every confidence that that is coming not long after the new year.
Awesome. That sounds great. And I know this is kind of an exciting time as I think people in the audience and people in general are kind of closing the year mentally and then also looking at like, okay, what is next year going to bring and how can we do things better and innovate? And so being here today is definitely a part of that. And okay, I have a question here asking for some clarity around how RBVM and CTEM are different.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we talked a lot about using risk and adjusting risk score and using that to prioritize our backlog of CVEs. And I think right there, that one acronym CVE, that's the key. When one talks about a risk-based vulnerability management solution, or BVM, that's a very narrow niche segment, and it focuses on CVEs. Whereas a CTEM solution, like Zafran, sorry, shameless plug, is going to focus on exposures at large. It might be CVEs, it might also be misconfigurations for example, a misconfigured firewall, be it Palo Alto or a WAF, such as Akamai, or a missing EDR agent. So those exposures also have a lot to say about what your risk posture is. And that is the primary difference, I would say, between a CTEM and an RBVM. The second and final, and I'll close on answering this question, is that CTEM, I said this earlier, I'll say it again, is also about the marriage between process and technology, whereas RBVM itself is just really a technology solution.
All right. So you'd say, is this a little bit like akin to SecOps, where it's not necessarily like, okay, I bought this software, I'm good to go. It's also a bit of a organizational, structuring and development
Yeah,
strategy in
yeah.
terms of what software.
So, as you know, and the technology supports the people in the process, right? So, yeah, CTEM is going to be that combination of process and technology that helps people achieve more in securing or better managing your risk posture. Yeah.
Nice. And then, if this is a bit of a newer concept for some people out there, where do people usually come in and reach out to you and say, okay, here I am, this is what I've got, these are my challenges. How
Uh,
can I make it better? What does that look like in a practical sense?
Practically speaking, having just been out at AWS reInvents and meeting with a lot of prospects, hundreds, it it often presents as, "Hey, what are you most similar to?"
Hmm.
People are not very familiar with the CTEM term. There is increasing awareness of it. Not very familiar, despite having Gartner coined the term back in 2022. But still, people are much more familiar with EASM and RBVM and vulnerability prioritization. So the question or the conversation often begins as, what I'm doing isn't working out well for me, and I know I need better, but I don't know what to ask for. And so then I just start asking questions. What are you trying to achieve? What's not working out for you? Tell me more. And then, I tell them a little bit about what we do and how we might be able to help.
That's great. That's great. And then I imagine it's a bit of a consulting thing, and then some onboarding from there.
Yeah, onboarding is real fast. We're agentless. So once we decide mutually that yes, the customer is interested, and from our side, yes, I have a pretty good idea that Zafran can help. Getting started is easy. So it's agentless. You just bring your API keys. We agentlessly connect our software as a service to your IT environment. I always like to say that can be done over a cup of coffee if you come ready with your API keys. And then you can start realizing value before lunchtime. If you're having that cup of coffee first thing in the morning, you can expect the dashboard to begin populating in just a few hours. So yeah, it's really rapid time to value.
That's awesome. And well, speaking of value, I had a couple questions in here about that. But so what would you say in terms of value that, what are people really excited about? What are the people that are using Zafran saying like, oh, damn, this is so good?
Yeah, people often present to Zafran with a request for, look, my vulnerability management program is off the rails. I need help. I don't know what to ask for. But if they come for the vulnerability prioritization and remediation, I think what ultimately lights them up is the ease of use, and more to the point, the proactive exposure hunting, and also the tracking of celebrity vulns. I think that really drives the aha moment. They immediately see how they could use this not only to better manage the risk posture, but also to better manage the expectations of their cybersecurity stakeholders.
That's awesome. So speaking of that risk hunting, how does that play out? Like what kind of interface or notifications or things are users getting when once they're on Zafran?
Could you clarify the question, please?
Yes, sorry. So, question kind of about like in terms of being proactive in the risk hunting, once users have got Zafran all set up, how are they kind of receiving this proactive,
Yeah.
uh,
Okay.
knowledge, I suppose, or like how does that come through practically?
Yeah, for example, so you can proactively go out and look for any gaps that might exist in your controls. You can go out and say, where am I missing a C2B agent on my production asset groups? Um, am I vulnerable to the latest celebrity vulnerability, and where? So you can actually go about and do such hunting. And to explain this further, and we will soon be publishing a blog post series that goes into great depth on how we can use proactive threat hunting to improve your risk posture management. I
That sounds
think
great.
the first blog in that series is going to be publishing next week, and will extend over 4 blogs into the new year.
I like it. So some holiday reading for all of us.
Hopefully not. Hopefully, I won't be busy writing writing blogs over the holidays. Hopefully, I'll be sipping some eggnog by the Yule log. But I think we'll publish the first next week, and then the second week of January, and on from there.
Alrighty.
Everybody enjoy your holiday. Take a break.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. Well, let's wrap things up here. But if someone's been out there in the audience, they've been asking questions, they're excited. What would you say is the best way to kind of follow up or take some next steps and follow their journey here with CTEM and or Zafran?
Yeah, sure. I'd invite you to check us out at zafran.io. And if you have any questions for me, you can reach me at rick@zafran.io. Or if you're ready to speak with, a cybersecurity expert beyond just the lowly marketing guy, then I would encourage you to send a mail to sales@zafran.io.
Awesome. That sounds great. Well, I'm going to wrap things up, say a final thank you for being here. Thank you for letting us pick your brain and letting me pose these questions to you as well from our audience. And unless you have any final words, I'm going to let you take off.
All right. My absolute pleasure, everybody. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope you have a phenomenally productive week, and hopefully to hear from you soon.
Awesome. Thanks again, Rick. Take care. Alrighty. Well, everyone who's been out there, again, thanks for all the questions. If you are looking for any follow-ups, as mentioned with Rick, you can get in touch directly to him by email or follow up with Zafran at zafran.io. If you haven't yet, you definitely will want to check out the handouts tab. Again, there's the threat exposure management platform data sheet, as well as that ebook, the vulnerability and exposure management cheat sheet. And again, who does not love a cheat sheet? Save yourself some time and steep yourself in a little bit of wisdom and knowledge there with that. So those are both in PDF, so you do want to grab them now. They might be a little bit tricky to find offline and outside of the webinar. So again, final reminder to do just that. And well, with that, I believe that is putting us at time. I want to sincerely thank both Rick for being here, as well as all of you out there in the audience for spending some time learning about this topic, investing in the future and what you guys can do to be proactive with cybersecurity and managing your risk posture overall. And before we wrap things up, we do have a prize to give away. So again, thank you for being here. You need to be live and present at the webinar to qualify for this prize. But without further ado, the winner of a $250 Amazon gift card is Stephen Luiser from Pennsylvania. Huge congrats, Stephen. And as always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar. And again, final thank you to Zafran. Final thank you to Rick Bosworth, who's given us so much to think about today. Final thank you to all of you again for, taking a little time in your busy days, lifting your heads up from the daily grind and taking a moment to strategize and plan ahead. Always a great way to spend your time and your efforts. I know I've learned a lot from the session today, and I hope that you all have as well. And I cannot wait to see you all at another webinar again soon. But if we do not see you soon, it is going to be great. And finally, from myself and Rick Bosworth from Zafran Security, hope you have a happy holiday season and a great rest of your day. Take care, everybody.